We often think of diet as something that shapes the body, the muscles, the outward form that the world sees. But the truth is far deeper. What you eat, when you eat, and how you eat are not just about your body. They are about the architecture of your mind. Every nutrient you consume, every meal you choose is either building clarity or confusion, resilience or fatigue, growth or decline. Food is information. With every bite, you are programming the chemistry of your brain. You are deciding whether your mind will be sharp, focused, and alive, or sluggish, distracted, and anxious. The path to mental strength does not begin with willpower alone. It begins with the fuel you put into the system that generates your thoughts, your emotions, and your sense of purpose. Stability is power. When blood sugar spikes and crashes, so does your clarity, so does your discipline, so does your ability to connect deeply with what matters. But when you stabilize the chemistry, when you nourish the brain with real foods, proteins, healthy fats, and micronutrients, you create consistency in your inner state. You become a person capable of steady focus, unwavering drive, and clear decision-making and planning. There's also a deeper intelligence at play, the gut and the brain in constant dialogue. The microbes within you shape how you feel, how you think, even how you view challenges. Feed them with fiber, fermented foods, whole plants, and they will repay you with calm, resilience, and optimism. Feed them with processed sugar and toxins, and they will fill you with anxiety, distraction, and doubt. Timing is as powerful as content. The brain thrives when it is challenged by periods of fasting, by deliberate breaks between meals. FOPO. These windows teach your neurons to adapt, to grow stronger, to unlock neurochemicals that elevate alertness and discipline. When you master not just what you eat, but when you eat, you begin to align with rhythms that have guided human strength for millennia. The removal of toxins is itself an act of self-respect. When you say no to what weakens you, excess sugar, alcohol, processed foods, you are declaring that your mind, your purpose, and your potential are too valuable to be clouded. You are not denying yourself pleasure. You are choosing a higher form of power, the kind that fuels creativity, courage, and conviction. And finally, understand this. Diet is not just a biological choice. It is a spiritual practice. To eat with intention is to affirm that you are worthy of clarity. It is to choose mastery over impulse, discipline over indulgence, vision over distraction. Each meal becomes a declaration of who you are becoming. Food is not simply fuel, for it is a form of language, a code that communicates directly with the body and the brain. You eat, you are not just satisfying hunger, you are sending molecular signals that alter the way your nervous system functions. Every bite carries instructions that influence the release of hormones, the activation of neurotransmitters, and the expression of genes. In this sense, food is information, and your mind is the receiver. The clarity of your thoughts, the stability of your mood, and even the depth of your focus are being shaped by the choices you make at the table. Proteins break down into amino acids that become the raw materials for dopamine, serotonin, and other neurotransmitters that dictate motivation, confidence, and emotional balance. When you eat quality protein, you give your brain the building blocks to create states of drive and optimism. So, when you neglect it, the system begins to run on empty, and you feel the mental drag of depletion. Similarly, omega-3 fatty acids found in fish, nuts, and seeds are not just nutrients. They are signals that strengthen the membranes of neurons, enhancing their ability to communicate and adapt. This is why diets rich in omega-3s are repeatedly linked with sharper cognition and lower risk of depression. Carbohydrates are information as well. This stability translates into steady focus and emotional regulation. By contrast, refined sugars flood the system with a chaotic message, spiking blood sugar, triggering inflammation, and crashing energy levels. The result is not just physical fatigue, but mental turbulence, irritability, brain fog, and difficulty concentrating. Even micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals act as keys in biochemical pathways that govern neuroplasticity, memory, and resilience. Magnesium calms overactive neural circuits. B vitamins support the machinery of energy production in the brain, and zinc helps regulate mood and cognition. To think of these as minor details is to overlook the fact that the brain is an organ of chemistry, and chemistry is dictated by the information food provides. This perspective transforms the act of eating into something purposeful. Each meal becomes an opportunity to shape your inner state. your inner state. Instead of seeing food as calories to be managed, you begin to see it as code to be mastered. The question is not simply, what do I want to eat? But what message do I want to send to my mind today? The stability of blood sugar is one of the most powerful levers for controlling the state of the mind. Glucose is the brain's primary source of energy, and the brain consumes it at an extraordinary rate compared to the rest of the body. When blood sugar levels are stable, the brain receives a steady supply of fuel, and the result is clarity, focus, and emotional balance. When blood sugar spikes and crashes, the mind mirrors that instability, racing with anxiety, dropping into fatigue, and swinging between extremes of motivation and apathy. This is why some of the most disruptive mental states people experience are not rooted in psychology alone, but in physiology driven by nutrition. When meals are composed of refined sugars, processed carbohydrates, and little fiber or protein, the body absorbs glucose rapidly, flooding the bloodstream. In response, insulin surges to pull the sugar into cells, and soon after, levels crash. The brain, deprived of steady fuel, begins to falter. Concentration becomes scattered, emotions fluctuate, and cravings intensify. These cravings are not signs of weak willpower, but biochemical signals of instability. The mind, sensing the disruption, calls out for another quick fix, locking a person into a cycle of peaks and valleys that erodes discipline and clarity. Contrast this with the effects of balanced meals that combine protein, healthy fats, and fiber-rich carbohydrates. The release of glucose into the bloodstream is gradual, insulin responses are measured, and energy delivery to the brain is consistent. In this state, thoughts are more organized, decisions are more deliberate, and emotions are less volatile. Stability in blood sugar is stability in behavior, in focus, and in the capacity to stay present with challenges. It is also worth noting that stable blood sugar reduces the stress load on the body. Wild fluctuations in glucose are interpreted as stressors, triggering cortisol and adrenaline. Over time, this chronic stress response diminishes cognitive performance, reduces memory, and amplifies feelings of overwhelm. By contrast, steady levels communicate safety to the nervous system, allowing higher order brain regions, the ones responsible for planning, creativity, and empathy, to function at their best. To master blood sugar is to master mental consistency. It is not about restriction or rigid rules. It is about honoring the brain's need for steady fuel. With each meal chosen wisely, one creates a foundation of stability that supports not only physical health, but the clarity, resilience, and strength of the mind itself. The brain is not a fixed structure. It is constantly rewiring itself in response to experience, learning, and environment. This remarkable ability, known as neuroplasticity, is the foundation of growth, adaptation, and healing. But the extent to which the brain can rewire is not determined by experience alone. It is deeply influenced by the nutrients. Nutrition sets the biochemical stage upon which neuroplasticity plays out, either enhancing the brain's ability to form new connections or restricting its capacity to change. Proteins provide amino acids such as tyrosine and tryptophan, which become neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. These chemicals are essential for signaling pathways that encourage motivation, mood stability, and the reinforcement of learning. Without adequate nutrition, these pathways are underpowered, and the brain's ability to strengthen or weaken connections in response to experience is diminished. Omega-3 fatty acids, especially DHA, integrate into the membranes of neurons, improving their flexibility and fluidity. This allows synapses, the junctions between neurons, to communicate with greater efficiency, which is central to learning new skills, remembering information, and adapting to stress. Antioxidants from colorful fruits and vegetables play a defensive role, protecting neurons from oxidative stress. Free radicals generated through metabolism can damage brain cells and impair their ability to form connections. Antioxidants act like guardians, preserving the integrity of neural circuits so they remain capable of change. Similarly, minerals like zinc and magnesium serve as cofactors in enzymatic reactions tied to synaptic plasticity. They regulate how neurons fire and how connections are strengthened or pruned. Deficiency in these nutrients often manifests as reduced mental clarity, slower learning, and difficulty adapting emotionally. Glucose, when delivered in stable amounts, provides the constant energy required for neurons to fire and remodel connections. If blood sugar is unstable, neuroplasticity suffers as the brain cannot sustain the energy needed for the rewiring process. Beyond macronutrients and vitamins, even the timing of food intake influences neuroplasticity. Periods of fasting can trigger the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, a molecule that acts like fertilizer for neurons, encouraging the growth of new branches and connections. Nutrition is therefore not peripheral to mental growth. It is central. The foods you choose either empower the brain's ability to learn, adapt, and evolve, or they hinder it. Every nutrient-rich meal is an act of shaping the architecture of the mind itself. The connection between the gut and the brain is one of the most profound discoveries in modern science, revealing that our thoughts and emotions are not generated by the brain alone, but influenced by the health of the digestive system. Within the gut resides a vast ecosystem of trillions of microbes known as the microbiome, which communicates directly with the brain through biochemical signals, immune pathways, and even the vagus nerve. This dialogue is constant, and it shapes how we feel, how we think, and how we respond to the world around us. When the gut is balanced and nourished, the mind reflects that balance with clarity, calm, and resilience. When the gut is inflamed or dominated by harmful bacteria, the mind often echoes that disturbance with anxiety, brain fog, or depression. Many of the neurotransmitters that regulate mood and cognition are produced in the gut. For example, a significant percentage of serotonin, the molecule often referred to as the happiness chemical, originates in the digestive system. The microbiome also influences dopamine, which is central to motivation and reward, as well as gamma-aminobutyric acid, GABA, which helps calm the nervous system. In this way, the gut does not simply digest food. It generates the very chemistry that determines whether a person feels motivated, focused, and at ease, or restless, scattered, and overwhelmed. Diet plays the decisive role in shaping the microbiome. Fiber-rich foods, fermented vegetables, and diverse plant matter provide fuel for beneficial bacteria, allowing them to flourish and send signals of stability and well-being to the brain. These foods create short-chain fatty acids that reduce inflammation, protect neurons, and support healthy cognition. In contrast, diets high in processed sugar, artificial additives, and unhealthy fats feed harmful bacteria, leading to an imbalance called dysbiosis. This state is often linked with mood swings, irritability, and impaired focus because the brain is receiving distress signals from the gut. Stress and poor sleep also disrupt this axis, which is why practices like mindful eating, stress reduction, and consistent rest become powerful allies in maintaining mental health. A calm gut communicates safety to the brain, while a disrupted gut signals threat, keeping the mind in survival mode rather than growth and creativity. The gut-brain axis shows us that mental strength is not just a matter of willpower or mindset, but of biology and nourishment. To feed the gut wisely is to feed the mind with stability, clarity, and resilience. When we think about food, most of the focus tends to be on what we eat. Yet, the timing of when we eat can be just as influential, particularly for the brain. Fasting, or deliberately extending the period between meals, engages ancient biological mechanisms designed to sharpen mental clarity, increase resilience, and prepare us to thrive under challenge. The brain evolved to operate during times of scarcity, and when food is not constantly available, it activates systems that elevate alertness, focus, and problem-solving abilities. This is why many people experience heightened clarity and energy when practicing intermittent fasting or simply reducing the frequency of meals. During periods of fasting, the body shifts from using glucose as its primary fuel to mobilizing stored fat, producing ketones. These ketones are not just an alternative energy source. They are profoundly efficient for the brain. They reduce oxidative stress, improve mitochondrial function, and serve as clean-burning fuel that enhances cognitive performance. At the same time, fasting triggers the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, a molecule that promotes the growth of new neurons and strengthens synaptic connections. This means that while the body is resting from digestion, the brain is actually remodeling itself, becoming more adaptable, resilient, and capable of learning. Meal timing also regulates circadian rhythms, which govern sleep, mood, and hormonal balance. Eating late at night, when the body is preparing for rest, disrupts these rhythms and can impair not only digestion, but also memory and emotional regulation the following day. By aligning meals with natural cycles, eating during daylight hours, and allowing the digestive system to rest at night, the brain functions in greater harmony with the body. This alignment translates into deeper sleep, more stable energy, and sharper cognition upon waking. It is not about rigid deprivation, but about creating intentional windows of eating and fasting that support the brain's natural design. Even shortening the eating window to 8-10 hours a day can reduce inflammation, stabilize blood sugar, and enhance cognitive endurance. The absence of constant snacking and grazing allows insulin levels to fall, creating periods where the brain and body reset, repair, and optimize their performance. Fasting and timing, therefore, become tools not just for physical health, but for mental mastery. By deliberately choosing when to eat and when not to, we align with biological rhythms that unlock clarity, discipline, and resilience far beyond what constant feeding could ever provide. The removal of toxins from the diet is not simply about subtraction. It is about clearing the path for the brain to function at its highest capacity. Many of the foods that dominate modern eating patterns, refined sugars, artificial additives, trans fats, and excessive alcohol, introduce stress to the body and inflammation to the brain. Inflammation is more than just a physical response. It clouds cognition, dulls focus, and disrupts the balance of neurotransmitters that regulate mood and motivation. When the system is inflamed, the brain is forced to allocate its energy toward managing damage rather than elevating performance, and the result is mental fog, emotional volatility, and diminished resilience. Processed foods, often engineered for hyperpalatability, send chaotic signals to the nervous system. They spike blood sugar, exhaust insulin responses, and overload reward circuits with artificial stimulation. This not only diminishes mental clarity, but also erodes the ability to sustain discipline because the brain becomes conditioned to seek constant stimulation rather than steady focus. Removing these toxins restores the sensitivity of dopamine pathways, allowing natural rewards such as meaningful work, connection, and progress to once again feel deeply satisfying. Excessive alcohol functions as both a neurotoxin and a disruptor of sleep architecture. While it may induce short-term relaxation, it robs the brain of the deep restorative phases of sleep essential for memory consolidation and emotional regulation. Over time, it accelerates brain aging and increases vulnerability to anxiety and depression. By eliminating or minimizing alcohol, the brain reclaims its ability to rest deeply and operate with greater clarity. Artificial chemicals, preservatives, food dyes, and flavor enhancers may seem harmless in small doses, but their cumulative effects often burden the liver and immune system, leading to subtle but chronic disturbances in mood and cognition. Choosing whole, unprocessed foods removes these hidden obstacles, freeing the brain from the low-grade stress of constantly filtering what does not belong. What emerges from the elimination of toxins is not a sense of restriction, but of liberation. The body's inflammation decreases, the gut microbiome restores balance, and neurotransmitters fire with greater precision. This state of purity allows mental energy to be directed toward creativity, discipline, and vision rather than managing internal chaos. Every act of removing what harms is an act of making space for clarity, resilience, and the highest expression of the mind. The way we eat is more than a biological act. It is a reflection of our relationship with discipline, intention, and self-respect. Food carries not only nutrients, but also meaning, and the choices we make around it ripple into the psychological and spiritual dimensions of our lives. Each meal becomes an opportunity to affirm who we are becoming, to practice self-mastery, and to align the body with the deeper values that guide our existence. Eating without awareness often leads to patterns of indulgence and distraction, but eating with intention builds clarity of mind and strength of spirit. When a person chooses foods that support mental clarity and rejects those that cloud judgment or deplete energy, they are exercising more than nutritional wisdom. They are cultivating discipline. This discipline strengthens neural circuits of self-control, reinforcing the idea that the mind can govern the body rather than being enslaved by impulse. Over time, these small acts of alignment create a psychological foundation of confidence, proof to oneself that decisions can be made in service of long-term purpose rather than short-term gratification. This sense of agency is deeply empowering as it translates into other areas of life where patience, perseverance, and restraint are required. On a spiritual level, food connects us to something larger than ourselves. It is the product of earth, sunlight, water, and the labor of countless processes, both natural and human. To consume with gratitude is to acknowledge this interconnectedness, to recognize that nourishment is a gift rather than something to be taken for granted. And this shift in perspective transforms eating into a practice of reverence, a reminder that our physical and mental vitality are sustained by forces beyond our control. When we honor this process, we align our inner world with humility and gratitude, qualities that expand the spirit. There is also a psychological liberation in eating with intention. Instead of being controlled by cravings or advertising, one begins to view food as a tool for growth. This reframes diet from a struggle against temptation into a purposeful practice of alignment. The individual no longer asks, "What do I feel like eating?" but instead, "What serves my clarity, my purpose, and my higher self?" That question alone elevates eating into a spiritual discipline, one that weaves together body, mind, and soul. In this way, every meal becomes not just nourishment for survival, but a sacred act of shaping the person one is destined to become. The message is simple but profound. The food you choose is not only building your body, it is sculpting your mind, your character, and your future. Every meal is a decision about the clarity of your thoughts, the strength of your discipline, and the direction of your life. To eat with intention is to declare that you will not live by impulse, but by purpose. It is to align biology with destiny. So let every choice at the table remind you, you are not just feeding hunger, you are fueling vision. You are not just eating for today, you are eating for who you are becoming.